Completely. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and try to get started because we have the room for really only an hour, actually probably 45 minutes right now. So we're going to move quickly. We have a representative faculty. Not all the faculty is here. Again, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Carrie Penabad, Associate Dean and Director of the Undergraduate Program. So thank you for those of you who have come out. We initiated this about 2.5 years ago to be able to get the students to really listen to the faculty present briefly their topics. And also, I would hope those of you in the room, if you have an interest in any of the courses and the faculty are here, that you take this opportunity to ask them some questions. So I am going to be doing maybe not so much the presenting. Quite frankly, I think that you could probably read, if the faculty is not here, we are presenting the flyers, and I think you could probably read them for yourselves. You don't need me to read them for you. However, I am familiar with all of the courses, so if after this you would like to get more information on any one of the classes and the faculty is in here, I'm happy to stay back and do that. I do want to add one course. The dean just informed me, and again, I think that the dean is very proactive about the curriculum, and he just informed me that he is working with with the development of an augmented and virtual reality course. This will be a 3-credit elective that will be focused on, again, augmented and virtual reality. You're not going to hear about it today. This is something that should be ironed out by the end of the week. But for those of you who have an interest in this topic, please watch out for it, and I would encourage you to consider it. So we're probably going to move through. Professor Hernandez is not here, so he will be, I'm going to go through the flyers in the order that they're presented. This is, again, a course that's been offered historically as part of the Historic Preservation Certificate. For those of you who are completing a certificate, this will be an important course for you to consider. We have a course entitled Solar Optimization Through Parametrics. For those of you who are not familiar, the person that is teaching this course is Professor Juan Yactayo. He is an adjunct faculty here at the school. He's been teaching with us for about 3 years now. He's a principal designer at Perkins & Will, and he comes and teaches with us predominantly in the visual representation curriculum, as well as several elective courses, in this particular case, focus on parametric modeling in contemporary design. He's very easy to reach, so if you have any questions, I would encourage you to reach out to him. So I think that I can introduce the first presenter. I'm going to ask all the faculty to just keep the presentation to about a minute if you can. Again, we're going to go through a lot of classes, and we have about 40 minutes. So I'm going to give the pulpit to Gonzalo Fuenmayor, who is a visiting critic in the fall for the first time. He's a noted artist in the city, and he will be teaching an advanced drawing course in the fall. So, Gonzalo?
Thank you, Carrie. So my name is Gonzalo Fuenmayor, and the course I'm proposing for the fall is Thinking Lines, Drawing Thoughts. And it's aimed for anybody who wants to learn how to draw, and I expand, anybody can take a class, so it's different levels, and it's catered for every student taking the class, and trying to basically enrich personal explorations of every student so that they can use drawing as a powerful tool for their practice. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, so the next presenter will be Professor Rafael Fornés, who will be offering the Studies of Havana. Rafael, would you like to come down?
Hi, my name is Rafael Fornés. I've been teaching in the school since 1996. We always teach this class focus on Havana, but also relate to the rest of the Caribbean. I was born in Cuba and raised there and went to school in University of Havana, and I moved to Miami almost 30 years ago. I have been in both shores frequently, and the classes are very, we have a very nice environment on the Unger building, you know, with this high-tech multimedia facility, the BIS Lab, and we are going to enjoy a lot of projections and materials and also field trips. Thank you. If you have any question, there is my email address, my telephone number, and also I recommend you to watch the HBO documentary about Havana and Cuba. It's called Fatherland of Death. Thank you.
Jacob Brilhart will be offering his toolkit elective. There's not a way to advance this. I have to come up every time.
That's all right. You want me to announce the next one?
Oh, actually, you could.
Hi, guys. My name is Jake Brilhart. This will be the third time that I'll be teaching Living in the Landscape, a tropical course on tropical homes in South Florida. We've expanded the homes to include all of Florida and the Southeast, and also in a few other places. But essentially the premise and the idea of this course came from when I designed and built my own house. I was looking around for details and materials and actually how do you draw your own house. And to find the details, I had to look back to the sort of mid-century buildings that Paul Rudolph and William Morgan and these great tropical architects did. So I went out and I got the actual plans that these architects drew. And I met personally with many of them, and they were thrilled that I wanted to learn about how they used to do construction and design. So I gathered up all those drawings and I started using the actual details that were embedded in those drawings to help me construct and build and design my house, this is a diagram or a drawing of my house, but maybe I should have shown the real thing. But in any event, I learned a tremendous amount from analyzing all of those projects and all of those buildings. And I kind of rebuilt those buildings digitally and through AutoCAD to help me build my own house. So what I thought would be a great course for the students, and I've run it twice and it's been quite successful, is each one of you will get a tropical house of your choosing, as long as we have the original architect's drawings, and you will rebuild and redesign that original house. And we'll have 10 to 12 students in the course, and what will happen is as you redesign and rebuild that house using the original documents, each student will do that. So by the end of the course, we'll have 12 sets and 12 computer models that you will all have access to, and we'll have them on the server. So when you leave the course, you'll have 12 prototypes or 12 case studies for which, when you want to design and build your own home, you have a great place to start. And you'll have all the working drawings and all the details and all the things that these guys once had. That's the basic idea. But we will also talk about, it's not just a documentation course, we'll talk about the materiality and the kind of aspects in which they used and how that can relate to new materials. And that'll be a part of the course that we will reference my home. We also do Chad Oppenheim's Dune House on Harbor Island. We do Terry Riley's Courtyard House in the Design District. So I've added some contemporary projects to the sort of mid-century projects. And I have a house from Alan Schulman's office as well. So we're starting to mix and match all the houses. It's a fun course. We'll meet one day a week, and we'll also do a fair amount of field trips to some of the mid-century houses and to some of the newer houses that have reinterpreted the old ideas. Thanks. And the next fellow up is Professor Jaime Correa. That's your illustrious introduction.
Urbanismus Practicum is an elective course in the history of in theory and practice of urban design. On the history side, it will cover speculations about Adam's house in paradise and about the foundational moments of primitive urbanism like Mohenjo-Daro in Pakistan, Greek and Roman urbanism, the medieval period, the Renaissance, the Baroque, neoclassical, modern, postmodern, and what we call now the post-digital period. On the theory side, I will emphasize the relationship between the form of the city and the typology of buildings through what academics have called the field of morphogenetics or morphotypology. This is a precise taxonomy of the city where you will be able to understand the elements of the urban composition and the methods for their assemblage. And on the side of praxis, I will explore the difference between formal top-down strategies and informal bottom-up tactics. As you may see, this is a comprehensive survey course designed for those of you that want to understand a bit more about the field of urbanism and the relationship to the creation of civic happiness. But most importantly, it is also a course that emphasizes the usefulness of the useless at a moment in history in which only that which yields cash revenues is considered of pragmatic importance, and in which everything else, including civility and humanism, are taking a cruel backstage position of indifference. If you're interested, the class will meet once a week on Tuesday afternoons. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Coming after Jaime is always a very big issue, especially if we, in fact, somewhere or another share the same interest in urban design, morphology, typology. This class is an elective for most students and required for the Master of Urban Design students in the MUD program. It is, in a certain way, a complement to the History of the City survey that is now being taught by Professor Dupi and that I used to teach. This is actually focusing on 20th century city, the 20th century urbanism only. Why? Because there is something particularly specific to the 20th century city which does not happen in the previous centuries, is that there is the real city. The city that is being built, that is being expanded, that is being reconstructed, and then there's a city that is being thought, the city that is being imagined. That's why I call the seminar Imagining the Metropolis. It's both in terms of imagining another way of doing it, another vision for it, which includes, for example, the Metabolist project in Japan, the MAD building strategy by Le Corbusier and other architects, but also imagining the city as it eventually was built. So the class is taught twice a week. The first seminar on Tuesday probably will be a lecture that eventually deals with the ideas about the city of the 20th century, most of them not being realized. And the class on Thursday will do something which is innovative in the course this year, is that we will actually use, in a collective fashion, we're going to be working all together on Thursdays on Google Earth and Google View. The idea is to use these new techniques to actually analyze a series of cities. You can see on the poster here, they may not all be there, but we will focus on large capital cities, certainly Paris, Berlin, Vienna, Barcelona, Tokyo, New York, Rome, Moscow. That's the list. We may not hit them all. The idea is, in fact, that we're going to be analyzing this city by walking them with a camera and analyzing how the blocks are formed, how the streets are shaped, the size of the streets, and so on. So the idea is really to see, at the same time, the ideas and the projects about the city, most of them visionary and unrealized, and the reality of the 20th century city. Thank you very much.
So the next two classes, the faculty will not be present, so I leave the flyers here for you to look at. The first is an elective in construction management, which of course is open to all students throughout the curriculum. Upper level Bachelor's of Architecture students as well as the Master's. This is likely a course that you will also be integrated with students from a number of disciplines at the school, which could provide an interesting synergy. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Professor Santana. We also have the professional lecture series that is taught by Professor Luisa Murai. She is unable to be here today, but this is actually also a case study course where you'll analyze a series of architects, both by way of lectures. Luisa actually requires that you attend our lecture series. The Technoglass lecture series is incorporated into this class. And in addition to that, you actually visit a number of offices based on specific themes, which in the last 2 or 3 years, Luisa has been sort of focusing or developing as part of our thematized lecture series. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Professor Murai. I would like to introduce, like Gonzalo Fuenmayor, who will be teaching with us in the fall and is an artist that is joining a School of Architecture. I also just wanted to introduce Professor Jeff Bass, and I wanted to say something for those of you who might be entering the upper levels next year for the first time, is that 2 years ago, the faculty looked at restructuring a bit the professional electives at the school. So prior to that, we always had professional electives that were 3 credits, so they were for an entire semester. And what we noticed is that this locked us into a model where we generally had to feed these courses with individuals which were largely academics that also had practical experience, but it was difficult to reach out to that broader let's say that broader body of individuals that have expertise in particular areas of the practice. And so what we decided to do is introduce 1 credit modules into the curriculum that allow us to really garner expertise from the field in very concentrated ways, because these are 1-month-long courses. So you will meet once a week for 4 to 5 weeks for 1 credit. And so we have this course, Advocacy for Architects, by Professor Jeff Bass, who is a founding principal of Shubin and Bass, a noteworthy and notable law firm in town. And Jeff is an esteemed and very respected lawyer who has a long-standing tradition of working with many architects. So, Jeff.
Gary, thank you very much. Not an architect. I look at this class as finishing school for architects. This is a class where I try to teach you how to think and speak less like an architect and more like a business person invested in the approval of a particular project. So many, to a large extent, this is about how babies are made, right? Projects ultimately get designed, but then they have to go through the governmental and regulatory approval process. But yet we've seen precious little instruction at the architecture school level about these governmental regulatory processes, how to find and read those codes and comprehensive plans that govern design, and how to put together a presentation before an elected or appointed board. So this is a course, it's a hodgepodge, it's some basic legal principles, it's public speaking, it's code reading, and it's designed to take a little bit of fear out of you and put a little bit of fear into you. The fear I'd like to take out of you is understanding the process that you will participate in as an architect seeking to get a project approved. The fear that I would like to put into you, I do through the Socratic and case study model, and showing you just about every disaster that could take place for which an architect will be held responsible in the entitlement process. So we have a good fun. We teach this more like a law course than like an architecture studio. And at the end of the day, what I hope to be able to do is tune your ear to the difference in presentation, vocabulary, and style that one presents to an architectural jury, in sharp contrast to the presentation that one would present to the county commission or the City of Miami Beach City Commission or Design Review Board, whichever the case may be. So thank you for your time. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
So that 1 credit class will also you can mix and match, but there are 2 other courses that will be offered in the fall. The faculty are not here, but it's zoning and the shaping of cities and marketing for architects, both of which will be 1 credit classes. So just wanted to note that. Professor Martinez. Yeah.
Great. So good afternoon. This class on early American architecture, urbanism, and architects is meant to be a course that gives you a survey on American architecture, and that is not American architecture proper, not the architecture of the Americas, looking primarily at the 18th and 19th century. But of course, we delve into the early beginnings in the 17th century, and I have included and will include, as we've done in the past, a key sort of or a key field trip where we're able to experience early American architecture to the present in a very thoughtful way, and that would be in the city of Boston. So we'll be able to see things like the drawings that you see up on the screen, which are drawings made of the Paul Revere House in the center of Boston. One important thing is that the approach that we will take in the seminar is to, whether we're looking at the built environment or the individual work of architecture, is to look at the design and ordering of space from pragmatic to delight. And then second, the relationship of structure and material to form. What this means is that all the examples that we'll look at, that'll be our primary sort of target. And then within that, I always like to emphasize that what we do with our analysis is that we look at the organization of space, proportion, scale, and ultimately ornamental program in these examples. I think it's an important course in that we all, in our curriculum, have a wonderful survey of the history of architecture globally. And in the recent past, as a faculty, we noticed that there were less courses that were looking at primarily at the American architecture. And so I've sort of taken this task seriously, and it also can work for those of you interested in historic preservation certificate. It acts as one of the primers that works for that as well. So thank you very much. Hope to see you there.
Professor Dupuy.
Good afternoon. My name is Victor Dupuy. The course that I'll be teaching that Professor Lejeune already alluded to is the History of Cities, a joint course required for first-year Master of Urban Design students and an elective for undergraduates. The course extends far and wide, looking from starting at the earliest human settlements, be they nomadic or sedentary, and culminating in the turn of the century where Professor Lejeune begins his look at the 20th century. I say far and wide in that we cover most continents, I admit. We don't get to the Arctic poles, but we do look at this globally, and not just in terms of the forces that shape cities, be they religious, social, political, economic, but also visionaries, theories of cities, and proposals, be they constructed or not. The course runs through blackboard and consists of 4 or 5 modules, beginning with the ancient world, the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, Baroque, and then the early modern period, taking us to around 1900. The Blackboard course is used for exams, for discussion boards, 'cause there's a lot of regular work done through that, as well as all assignments. The course meets twice a week for 75 minutes that are mostly lecture and discussion. And we do have a field trip planned. We will be going to the moon during the Thanksgiving break so we can get a nice view of the world from outer space. Thank you.
So we're going to go back to the beginning, because I think Professor Hernandez arrived. So this will be the last presenter, but we would also like, after Professor Hernandez presents, we'd like to just go through a few others that are not here, just to round out the offerings, and then, of course, provide you with a few minutes to be able to approach the faculty if you have any questions.
So this is an image of Santiago de Cuba right after Hurricane Sandy parked itself over the original colonial capital. And before I speak about the course, I'd like to say a thing about the course on advocacy, if I may. If only to explain why I appeared in that poster. And that is that a number of years ago, I was working with a young developer who wanted to do something novel across the street, right next to the slab building that the university owns. And fortunately for me, on the team was your Professor Bass. Jeff Bass was the legal mind on the team. And it was we were trying to do something new that's always a challenge, and we had to sort of challenge the convention of thinking. And the developer was young, and he wanted to create the same amount of public open space on the surface of that parcel that existed before this project was proposed. In other words, when the project was blank. And we did that. The signature space is an elongated courtyard that we call the Paseo, which will link US 1 to a public park behind it. So issues of connectivity and all this were important. Point is, we had to do a lot of research, and then all that research had to be correctly messaged, and messaged in such a way that if the developer were being contested in court, that the evidence would hold up in court, and so it was. Professor Bass helped us bundle all of the research, coached us, thought with us, did diagrams, architectural diagrams with us. We tried to explain the course. Then it was messaged, then it was voted favorably, and then it was challenged in court by a group of neighbors that were opposed to the project, and then eventually it prevailed in court. So it's a very good experience because it's very accurately hinged on real life experiences. And that's why I was in that poster, because he was using the photographs from one of the presentations. But seriously, I really recommend the course to you. It's the greatest legal mind I've ever worked with. And I've worked with a number of them. Anyway, my course is not like that. When I teach in Rome, I often tell the students in Rome that when the human foot treads on a place for 2,700 years, something happens. It's the only way to expose the wonder of Rome when you're living in it, and the shock that happens when you move from Miami and live in Rome for 6 months. So if you sort of extrude that into the entire planet, what your generation is already dealing with, we are all dealing with it, but your generation will deal with it increasingly so, is how we manage the surface of the earth. The notion of cultural stewardship and natural stewardship is already, I would say, a standard in the field. We don't have to think of them as challenging one another anymore. The question is the surface of the earth. And what is beginning to happen now is that there's a kind of rethinking of cultural stewardship where there's a new equation or a new balance that has to come forth. And that is, if we apply the conventions of historic preservation, rules, regulations, and law on this site, is that okay in the new balance of earth plus building equals health? So this course deals with that somewhat. So the course is bisected, so to speak, not literally, but we have a kind of dual reference point. This course deals with that new reality, which we're all in, thankfully. It's a challenging time, but it's an inspiring time. But it also does something else that's quite practical. And that is, it does kind of by rote go through the standard rules, regulations, and practices of historic preservation. Why? Because when you get out and apply for a job, you can put that on your resume. And when you're in a firm and you're working and you get a preservation project, those are the tools with which you have to labor. So on the one hand, it is trying to invest you of the conventional knowledge of the field as it has been. On the other hand, it is trying to inspire in you a healthy, critical attitude towards those tools. We'll meet on Monday nights from 6-something to 8-something, once a week. And the format of the class is readings, lots and lots and lots of readings, and they're very diverse, and discussions, and then there is 2 papers. Okay? Thank you. Hope to see you there.
So I want to make sure we haven't overlooked anyone in the audience, if there's anybody. Okay. So just to point out a few courses that were not presented, that I just would like to make you aware of. We're going to be teaching a new course entitled Urban Cartography. This is a course that will be led by Christopher Mader and Timothy Norris. Christopher Mader is the Director of Software Engineering at the Center for Computational Science, and Tim Norris is a faculty member in the Geography Department. And you will be exposed to, or actually taught, GIS modeling, but through the lens of an architecture school, which will focus highly on the visual materials presented, so not only the gathering of data, but how one actually provocatively presents that information by way of visualization. So that will be that class. There's also our architectural photography course taught by Professor Stephen Brook. He's taught this for many years at the school, and so there's probably a number of your own colleagues that have taken this course. We will also be offering an introduction to the world of hotel design and development, and that will be, that's the second year that we are teaching this course. For those of you who have an interest in hotel design or housing, that might be of interest. We're also returning, and we will be offering a sustainability course that is going to be taught by Professor Jonathan Burgess. This course will give you a general introduction to the topic of sustainability, but based on a significant amount of student input, he has also refined the class to really allow it to be more of a preparation to be able to take the lead exam at the end. So he will give some general, again, he will give some introductory lectures generally on sustainability, but this will be considered a kind of preparation for the lead exam. And we have, as I mentioned earlier, the zoning and the shaping of cities and the business practices. I believe that Professor Schulman wanted to speak briefly on one course that is also currently listed that will be offered as a pro seminar.
Pro seminar. So there's one class that is being changed around a little bit this year, the pro seminar, which is ARC 629. Which is a class that has been created at its origin for the Master of Science students to have a kind of a practicum in how to do research and how to organize research. That class, Professor Furley is on sabbatical this coming semester. It's going to be taught by Alistair Gordon. Many of you may have met Alistair Gordon either through his Poetics of Place seminar, which he did last semester here at the school, or as one of the 3 thinkers that were here as part of the Vincent Scully lecture series. So he's an extraordinary architecture critic, historian in his own right, and he has evolved that class, Poetics of Place, as a way of exploring new methods of doing research through both drawing and written word. He's going to be bringing that logic into the pro seminar, which I think may make it interesting for many of you who are not in the Master of Science program as well, because it's a great overall survey of research methods and which will survey a number of different fields, bring in a lot of speakers to talk about their research and how they've been able to represent their research graphically. This will include many different fields such as cartography and historiography. I really recommend it, again, as an elective as well as a required course for the Master of Science students. And Poetics of Place will move to spring 2019. Thanks.
So I believe this concludes the presentation, so I want to thank those of you, the students that were able to attend, and also those in Rome, who I believe are being live streamed at the moment. And again, I would encourage you, if the faculty can remain a few minutes, you have any questions about any of the courses that were presented, this is the optimal opportunity to ask those questions to the faculty. So thank you once again.